Hello there, and welcome to Fixing the Sequel Trilogy, the Writers' Room podcast dedicated to rewriting the Star Wars sequels. I'm Bryce Quinn, and I'm joined by Cole Forfang Phan, one of our guest hosts. How are you doing, Cole?
Hello, I'm pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing... I've got a cough, actually. Anyway.
That sucks.
And also joined by Sandro Karayan, our progress supervisor.
Hello.
Fill us in on our progress, Sandro.
Well, we got a fun episode today.
Yeah.
We're doing the First Order and Captain Phasma, how that sort of integrates into the universe, into like a wider scale, and how we're gonna sort of play that in the first movie.
In terms of an overall update, so we're in the thick of our release schedule right now for our first batch of 9 episodes or so. What we've got coming up is a writer's room that the 5 of us are going to do together. We're going to get our treatments together, and the goal is to create some kind of semblance of a treatment that our listeners and viewers and whatever can actually go and read. So we have something tangible, something physical as our first draft presented to the community, to the audience, to the world. So that's what we're working on at the moment, and that's what we'll be putting forward in the next couple months. So it's July for us right now, so hopefully by August or September, we've got something tangible for everyone to read and have a look at and say, oh, there's some actual progress. But for right now, like you said, Captain Phasma and the First Order. So let's jump into it. How the show works, really quick. We start with some context. Who is the people we're talking about, yada, yada, yada. Move on to what went wrong with those people or those groups in the sequel trilogy, and then Article 2, how we can throw some ideas together to fix those elements in the movies for our own rewrite. But, context, Captain Phasma. On screen, classic military general villain, dies in the second movie, very cool armor, very bland character. That's all I wrote.
Well, I fully agree with that.
Yeah. I don't think...
Before we get into critiques, let's just do context. We can talk about her in the comics and who her actual character is. We'll dive real hard into why we hate her. Hate her is a strong word, but yeah, any kind of critiques in that.
Whilst I'm like very hazy on the Phasma lore, I know that there's a lot of fans of the book, and I think there's some comics also expanding on her background, and I heard that it's generally well received amongst fans, and they don't feel like they got to see much of that within the movies, within the saga. Where I stand on that is what I've seen of her, what I've seen in the movies, which is, I feel like, are we doing... We're just like setting up.
We're just doing context right now.
Yeah.
And if we had Carmelo Extended Universe Keating here right now with us, he would probably dive into the book that she's like the book that everyone likes. And he really loves Extended Universe stuff. He really loves the books. He loves Bloodline. Obviously, it's Carmelo Bloodline Keating. That's what we call him. He would probably tell us about the books. And he's probably very frustrated with us, the three of us, not really knowing much about it. Cole, you got anything
feel like
to...
I did research ages ago.
Yeah.
And it's since then it's been ages, and it's so foggy in my head right now. So I feel like so bad coming on.
That's fine.
Not being able to elaborate.
Cole, you got anything for us?
Well, I also unfortunately don't know much about Phasma outside.
Aren't we just the three perfect people for this
outside of the
episode?
context of the films.
Yeah.
So in a way, that's a problem with the films. But I mean, I distinctly remember when Force Awakens was coming out and how hard they promoted Phasma.
Oh, yeah.
Like
In the trailers, incredibly.
I remember the
all
parallels was
trailers.
drawn to Boba Fett. It was like, oh, this is like their cool design.
Oh my God, I remember so many people, like buying all the merch before the film even came out.
Yeah.
Like, everyone's going to be so excited for Phasma. And as well, Gwendolyn Christie, amazing actress.
Oh, great casting, great actress. Yeah.
I know. And then she just doesn't do much in Force Awakens, and then
dies at the end of Last Jedi. Yeah.
Yeah,
and that's all we get of her really on screen. We don't really get any history, backstory, lore, what her personality is even like. We get one scene where she does the trash compactor scene where she gives up all the info. And then we've actually talked about in a previous episode that there's a deleted scene where Finn calls her out in front of all the troopers
in Last Jedi.
In The Last Jedi, and says, oh, she gave you all up, yada yada, like she betrayed you, and then she kills them all, I think. And there's a deleted scene that they shot. And Mello loves that scene, and we compared it to like an Andor scene kind of thing. It was very brutal.
Yeah.
It was very dark, yeah.
Yeah, so that's some of that's the very little context that we're presented with for Phasma. So I think we can wrap that one up, jump right into First Order. This one we have a lot more context for. This one we've actually done a little bit more research on. So direct rip-off of the Empire as it was in A New Hope. That's it. I think that's a pretty good context, and then we can build on from there. So we also have a lot to talk about with the EU history as well as Mandalorian canon, which they've been building on a lot more recently in the Mandalorian show.
First Order kind of shows up out of nowhere and just becomes the de facto big power in the galaxy, despite the fact that the New Republic already exists.
Yes.
Mike's first
There
one.
he is.
There we go.
He's back.
He's back. We then have the Final Order, but that's kind of different.
Oh, is it? Dude, Rise of Skywalker, literally in my head, I treat like fan fiction, and the Final Order, I
Yeah.
think, is the straw that broke the camel's back
I
for me.
still
with that
haven't
one.
seen it.
I
You
feel
still
like
haven't seen Rise
I
of
still
Skywalker?
haven't seen
Dude, I
Rise
love
of
you so
Skywalker.
much. That's so funny.
I know.
That's amazing.
I feel like last time I did an episode with you hadn't seen it, and we're like,
Yeah.
oh, we got to make you watch that.
I know, and
We're going to do it at some point.
every time before I've like even worked on this podcast or anything, I've said to myself, "Oh, I better watch Rise of Skywalker before I come on."
God, I love that.
Still haven't. Can't be bothered. I got
That's so
Succession.
funny.
It's fine. It's fine. Star Destroyers, they come out of the ground.
It's like
We need to
1,000
do
of them.
this.
There's 1,000 of them, and they
Yeah.
all have mini Death Stars on them.
Yeah, and
Somehow they exist.
somehow Palpatine came back.
Somehow
Somehow
Palpatine
Palpatine returned. So that's where they get to at the end with the First Order, with the big ships coming out with the Death Star lasers and stuff, which is a very silly writing decision. But anyways,
They're led by Snoke,
they're led by Supreme Leader Snoke.
Supreme Leader Snoke, who is depicted in the films as sort of like their beneficiary, like the person funding everything that they're doing.
Wait,
And-
is that how he's depicted in the law?
yeah,
He has like the money and the funding.
that's
and
why
the
he's
resources?
like the leader.
Interesting. Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that. So for listeners, sorry if I'm annoying. I aggressively don't care about extended universe stuff. I really love the movies. I'm not a huge Clone Wars fan. I love Andor, and I watch all the Disney Plus TV shows, but apart from that, I don't really dig into it too much.
But because the First Order is also comprised of some ex-Imperial, there's obviously another motive there.
Yeah, so they've got, some ex-Imperial loyalists and that kind of thing. For the majority of their ships and resources and all that kind of stuff, it seems like, like you're saying, that General Snoke, Supreme Leader Snoke brings that to the table.
Yeah.
Then they also have General Hux, who is, played by Donald Gleason, who we love. And then
He's awesome.
we also have Captain Phasma. A lot of our rewrites, we talk about changing it to General Phasma and then Senator Hux, but we've talked about that a lot, so we're just going to... In The Mandalorian, we see a lot of references to, especially in Season 3, Operation Necromancer, they call it, or Project
Yeah.
Necromancer. And that's I think they're trying to clone Palpatine and bring him back.
Yeah,
It's
I
still a
think
bit of a
they're-
mystery,
They're
but
setting up for, I think, like a cloning Snoke.
trying
kind of thing.
to kind of do
'Cause
what
we got
Clone
that
Wars
episode
did.
in Season 2 as well,
Yeah.
where he's going past the Bacta tank.
And they see all the clones in the back to tanks.
Yeah.
So they're trying to do a Clone Wars and try and bridge some of the gap between, the
Mm.
sequels and the original trilogy and fill in some of the spaces and the questions we have with Extended Universe.
But they're trying to fill in questions that they didn't have answers to previously, and that's
yes.
Yeah.
So it's like
where I
retroactive storytelling,
Mm.
which is,
Yeah.
I mean, we're already
It's
seeing
the worst way to
cracks
go about it.
starting to show because a lot of people didn't really react well to Season 3 of The Mandalorian. Got anything, Cole, to jump in with First Order context and stuff?
Well, I mean, like, with the First Order, I always feel just this sense of, actually, just with the sequels, it's always this sense of, like, so much potential. And especially, like, with a character like Phasma and all that, I feel like at the core, there's this really good ground to build these great leadership characters. Say what you will about J.J. Abrams and the whole mystery box storytelling and leaving everything ambiguous.
I will say what I will about that.
But I mean, like, Snoke was a very cool part of Force Awakens, and I think there was a very good mystery there. If only I had a good answer about
Yeah,
I
it.
and we
remember
you
back
guys,
in the
sorry.
day, it was very alluring. The whole internet was going like, "What is Snoke?
Yeah.
Who is he?" That's the time everyone thought he was going to be fucking Mace Windu.
Oh, God, that's so funny. That's
It's-
where I think Darth Jar Jar came out of that era too, right?
Yeah, I think Darth Jar Jar
Yeah.
did come out of that era.
Because there was so
was a,
much theory crafting about Rey and her lineage and about Snoke and who he was and where he was from, all that kind of stuff. It was like a
Um,
huge part of like
and Darth
internet
Jar Jar
theories.
sort of just became then the meme.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
The meme of the theory crafting. And it's like it's kind of gorgeous. Like it's very funny and it's very it's fun like reminiscing on a time where like that was the fun thing to do. And then we get Rise of Skywalker, which obviously sort of like takes a back step, and then we're just skipping around with Rise of Skywalker. Oh, sorry. You got Last Jedi.
Yeah.
Takes a back step, and then we're skipping
Yeah.
around with Rise of Skywalker.
Yes.
So it goes a bit everywhere.
Snoke dies in Last Jedi. We have his huge hologram. We have all these ships, yada, yada, yada. So we've got a huge monolithic force of the First Order and then the Final Order. Don't get context for how they came about, who is running it, where it comes from. And that's something we are really looking to change and build upon in our rewrite. But I think that covers the context pretty well. Let's jump into our Article 1, something I can feel the tension in the room. The three of us are so keen to really hound on Phasma and First Order. So let's jump into it.
I got something to say about Phasma. I feel like she dies twice. I feel like she's already dead in The Force Awakens.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I think we've talked about this before.
Solo's like, oh, let's just chuck her down the
Trash compactor.
trash compactor.
And it's assumed that she dies, right?
It's assumed that they do it because the next scene she's not there.
yeah, and she doesn't
Yeah.
come back for the final act, and that's
Yeah,
that's
and
it.
then it
And
blows up.
Blows up, yeah.
and that's it. And then in Last Jedi, she's just back again.
She's back.
That's
I
a
think
great
it's
point.
an incredibly cool suit design.
Oh my god. yeah.
Although it's just a silver version of the First Order troopers.
Yeah.
And
She's
the
got
first
that cape. She got that shoulder cape.
the shoulder cape is
Rad.
really cool.
And the spear.
And the spear is awesome, but like if we're just breaking it down then to first order troopers look shockingly similar to stormtroopers. And
That's
it's
true.
it's clearly trying to like recreate something from that. And it makes sense why armors would be similar.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially if they've already been optimized in a military sense, such as like the Clone Wars and then the Empire. But it felt more like a Disney wanting to make Star Wars kind of decision rather than a
very
design
much.
decision.
Disney was like, same with Lucas back in the day. Let's design a character that's gonna sell toys like hotcakes,
And
and
they
they're
did.
really good at it. That's that's what they do. Cole, you want to jump in with anything?
Yeah, well, I guess like with Phasma, like, are we critiquing or
This is
making
critiques,
suggestions? Okay. Well, I mean, yeah. Once again, it's another unfleshed out character, right?
Yeah,
You
yet
ask-
another.
Yeah, and
in a
you
long
ask
line.
so many questions. You want to know more about her. They
Yeah.
never explore that. One thing that I really wish happened a bit more that just is not kind of there is the rivalry between Finn and Phasma is really not developed enough. Like, sure, you kind of go in with the understanding that she's his superior, and when he falls out, obviously they're going to hate each other. But at least from my recollection about watching through the sequels, well, 2 of them,
Yeah,
it's just I don't feel like that rivalry is really earned.
yeah, no, absolutely.
Like, it's not.
I
there for me.
agree. I think that rivalry isn't explored in any capacity of close to what it could have been.
Yeah.
They don't even come close to it.
Yeah.
And
no,
there's
don't.
so much potential there.
Well, they're so
Exactly.
separate in rank that it just like it makes no sense for it to be called a rivalry. I think it's more of just a hatred.
Yeah,
Like it's
Yeah.
built out of Finn's hatred for what the First Order is, and because Phasma kind of represents everything that the First
Yeah.
Order is, like she's like the embodiment of that force. It's kind of like all my hatred from what the First Order did to me.
Yeah.
Is towards you
Yeah.
specifically.
but that's us like reading hard into it.
But that's
'Cause
us
that's
reading
not really
hard into it. I would
presented
like it
Yeah,
to be
no.
like if we're going to go back and do this, I'd like that to be present.
explicit in the text.
Yeah.
Yeah.
like very clear. Like they hate each other, not just Phasma. It's just like, oh, you betrayed us, so I got to kill you now.
Yeah, exactly.
She kind of feels like indifferent to him almost
yeah,
in
she's
some of the
just-
scenes, and then in other scenes,
yeah.
it's like, oh, she directly hates you specifically. In the end of Last Jedi, for example.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, like she knows him
Yeah.
specifically.
Yeah,
like
exactly,
she's coming
and
for
that's
him in
not-
particular.
When really, I think Phasma should, and I know like this is jumping ahead. This isn't really a criticism,
chilling.
but like the thoughts in my head, I feel like Finn should like hate her way more than she actually
Yeah.
cares about Finn. Because like really, I feel like Finn would just be another number. To her.
Exactly.
Ah.
It would really like show how she views all her subordinate.
it's just like numbers on
Yeah.
a sheet, you know.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Like Kroll.
Who?
Kroll?
I don't know who you're talking about.
Clone Wars. Jedi.
Oh, Pom Krell.
Pom Kroll.
I can't believe I just gave you a Clone Wars name. What the heck?
Yeah, I know. Fuck.
That never happens.
I said Kroll.
Yeah, Jedi
Jesus.
Master Pom Krell in the Umbara arc.
Yeah.
Yeah,
of
in the
Clone Wars.
Umbara
One of the
arc.
few
Yeah, he's
arcs I've
phenomenal.
seen. Yeah, never has a cool moment like Boba Fett. I wrote this one down. So
Yeah, true.
Boba Fett gets this the moment in Empire Strikes Back where he successfully tracks down the Millennium Falcon, captures Han Solo, yada yada yada, and takes him back to Jabba's palace. Very cool character. Doesn't get a whole lot to do, but at least he has that where he succeeds and outsmarts the heroes. And
Yeah.
it's like a cool kind of foil. He looks cool, but he gets to do a cool thing. Great. Captain Phasma looks cool. Never really gets a scene where she gets to shine herself.
No.
She never gets to actually, and I really desperately want to have her have a really cool fight scene, and I'm gonna get to that later in some of
Yeah.
my ideas. But I've got a cool idea for a fight scene, but I want her to have a cool moment. She never gets one in the sequels.
No, for sure. First Order criticisms.
Yeah, we can jump into first.
Like I feel like we brought this up a bit even in like our Palpatine episode. Just like this basic world building, the setup of we don't really know how this came to be.
Yeah,
It just sort of appears. We get some text at the start of Force Awakens.
yeah, like very,
Yeah.
like very short amount of
vague.
text.
Vague answers, and we're led to expect that this huge force is now like kind of dominating the galaxy, even though it's been like 20 years in
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
actual sequels since they defeated the Empire. The galaxy's had this chance to grow a new republic. Like,
Yeah,
really.
and how did they build Starkiller Base?
Yeah, yeah. How
How did they do that? Especially like when we saw how long it took to do the Death Star and the scale of Starkiller Base as well. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Absolutely. I heard a really great criticism once from a YouTuber, Jeremy Johns, and he was like, "What is like?" I think it was just after Last Jedi came out. He's like, "What even is this galaxy? Who are these people?
Yeah.
Why? So is it just like the rebels and the Imperials fighting against each other,
Hmm.
and then the rest of the galaxy is just ignoring them? Because
Yeah.
you don't ever see what it looks like to just be a citizen in this world.
Yeah.
And so the world building, especially the sequels, makes it this way, is so weak. So
Yeah.
and it doesn't really create a world that you can even imagine yourself to live and breathe in. I say the prequels actually do a better job of that.
I agree.
I think there is a time where you do get to see what it's like to be a citizen in the sequels.
Which is when?
That's when they cut to the citizens right before they
Explode.
get hit with the
Yeah.
big red laser.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get to see them looking at a big red laser and being like, "Oh no, big red laser!"
yeah.
And I really felt in that moment.
I was like, oh, that's what it's like to live there.
That's what it's
Yeah.
like to get hit by a big red laser.
God. Anyway, so yeah, they don't really take time to do that at
Yeah.
all in the sequels to really kind of
No.
flesh out that world building. From a writing perspective, obviously that's world building, that's meta kind of stuff. From writing, it's so clear what they did. All they wanted to do was just wind back the clock so that it's a big empire fighting an underdog group of rebels, exactly like A New Hope, because we know
Yeah.
that is exactly what J.J. Abrams set out to do with The Force Awakens and
Yeah.
the scriptwriters and everything.
I think having a big empire isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think in one way or another we get there in the prequels as well. But it's by different means. It's not just trying
starting
to...
Force Awakens by winding back to the clock is objectively, I think, a lazy move. And it's one of
Absolutely.
our biggest issues with the sequel trilogy is that you start Force Awakens and the Empire is back basically as the First Order, and it's huge. It doesn't make any sense.
You have to change
Yeah.
that narrative. There has to be reason for it to exist in this world.
Exactly. And like we've said, that's what they're trying to do with the Mandalorian and extra content and stuff like that. And
Yeah, and it doesn't help that they made an effort to avoid any mention of politics or the galactic situation, so you really have no context for how it even got there.
So in our politics episode, we mentioned, a lot of their driving philosophy seems to be if the prequels did it, we'll avoid it in the sequels.
Yeah,
So they did a lot of politics in the prequels, which at the time people reacted really badly to.
Yeah.
In retrospect, people seem to actually quite like.
yeah.
I've
The execution, really.
had some time to talk to a bit more casual Star Wars
Okay,
fans
yeah.
in the past while, putting out a bunch of feelers. We're not casual Star
No,
Wars
we're
fans.
fucking nerds. Yeah.
We're like, I think it's easy to accept the fact that we're just nerds. That's why
Yeah.
this podcast exists. That's why we're making
No.
it. No.
Dude, you just did like the nerdiest fucking thing. Anyway, continue on.
yeah. A lot of them still will watch Phantom Menace specifically and think
Fuck, this is kind of boring.
This
Like,
is
there's
boring.
a lot of politics.
there's a bit too much
Yeah.
politics.
Yes,
I totally agree. Yeah. You go.
Yeah, if I may interject, I think it was last year, I did a big watch through of the prequels with my mates. And oh my God, it really is. It's so dull and dry. And I have a friend who's also doing a rewrite of the prequels. And when I was speaking to him about the whole politics side of it, really what the issue is there's no actual dramatic tension to any of the political scenes.
It's just things
pretty
that are
much
happening.
exposition, right? And
Yeah.
it's like the trade routes are happening, and you never see how that actually impacts anyone in the story. It's just shit that really has no dramatic weight.
Yeah.
Whereas, like what I told him is that, well, if you're going to go with the trade routes things, actually show the citizens of the galaxy and how they're affected by that, rather than just say it.
Politics is literally representing citizens. It's the
Exactly,
representation
yeah.
of the people on a political
Yeah,
scale. So
and-
show the citizens.
Exactly, and you see that in the original trilogy with how everyone is treated. The state of the universe, how everyone reacts,
Yeah.
and even though politics isn't as stated outright, it's there in the universe and how everything is happening.
Personally, I think the sweet spot is somewhere in between the prequels and the original trilogy. Somewhere where you're showing it enough for it to be interesting, dramatically tense, realistic to a certain extent in a space fantasy, but not so much that it's dull.
I think
Exactly,
it's
it's the execution.
That's the Goldilocks zone, I think.
I think taking a bit more of a political eye in the first movie is important to that. We get to set that up, and then we can just keep moving forward. And we have that set up, and we understand what the rules of this galaxy is.
We're still in critiques though, so I just want to bring it back to that. No, you guys are fine. Obviously, they failed with what we kind of would consider to be landing in that Goldilocks zone of politics by just going so far down the other direction of just not including it at all. So it leads us to a bunch of questions. Where do they get their resources? What is their purpose and why? Like, what are they actually trying to achieve? What does Supreme Leader Snoke want to achieve? Does it have anything to do with Palpatine? That kind of question.
And it's presented very much as just galactic control.
Exactly.
Although begs the question, do you not already have galactic control?
Yeah.
I guess not, but we don't really get to see the New Republic, so we sort of just infer that the Resistance is the only thing left, and that they've got barely anything to begin with. So we kind of think that they already have galactic control.
Yeah,
so it's weird.
exactly.
It's hard to infer exactly what they're going for and what they already have.
Yeah.
They're just a force. They're just a big force that flies around.
And let's go even a step further than that. Let's look at Mandalorian season 3 and where it's like the Shadow Collective they call themselves, with Moff Gideon on this council.
Yeah, right.
And Domhnall Gleeson. No.
No, not Domhnall.
What's his actual name? Hux's dad.
Hux's dad.
I can't remember his first name, but Hux's dad is
yeah.
on this council, and he's leading up Operation Necromancer. And we know that in the extended canon, Hux, General Young Hux, Armitage Hux, that's
Yeah.
it. he conspires with Captain Phasma to kill his dad and take
Yeah.
over, and that's why he's such a young general leading this massive
Mm.
army. So we know all of that. We know some of the context. How do we get from Mando season 3, when there's 10 dudes in a room, to 20 years after that, less than 20 years, a huge, massive army? How do you even
Because they got a bunch of
possibly-
starships flying around the galaxy.
Where
They
do they
kidnap-
build them? Where do
kidnap
they
children.
get them from? Do they
They
have
kidnap
old ships?
children.
They kidnap kids, apparently. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something. That's an idea.
That's something
but-
we're,
never
we're
explore
doing, though.
But they never. Oh yeah. So they canonically kidnap kids, but they never explore where
Mm.
they get those kids from, or
Yeah.
like where.
Never,
like, who
you
they
never
are.
see that in Finn's story. You never like questions like
Where were
about
you
his
born,
parents
dude?
and-
Like,
yeah,
yeah. Anyway, so all of these like endless questions of what is the First Order, where does it come from, and why does it exist?
And to break it down to bare bones and like go the complete opposite direction and have no political side to it, whilst as well doing no prior world building to what your galaxy looks like beforehand, leads to this overall just like there's nothing.
It doesn't
Mm.
feel like a real place.
Yeah.
Even in
Yeah.
the sense that like the original trilogy, arguably doesn't feel like this real place. Sort of.
Yeah,
It takes that and just
Yeah.
like it just accentuates that to the max. You know? It
Mm.
doesn't
there's
feel like
some
a real
very
working place.
cool lore about why they're talking about the trade routes in Phantom Menace, and then how Qui-Gon initially get like why Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are starting on that Trade Federation ship that's occupying Naboo at the start of the movie.
Yeah, there's a
Mm.
book, right? Master and Apprentice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like just before Phantom Menace.
Yeah, and it's all about like Qui-Gon's like secret investigation. Like he's
Mm.
like a hair drop away from figuring out that Palpatine is actually
Mm.
Sidious.
And then he fucking
Yeah.
dies at the
And
end of the movie.
then he
yeah.
gets murked.
my
So it's
God,
like
yeah.
Duel of the Fates, literally Duel of the Fates. Like
Yeah.
the whole universe could have gone so much differently if Qui-Gon had survived.
this is a bit of a tangent,
Oh,
but
go for it.
my thought is, yeah, on that note about Finn's parents and all that, I'm just thinking now, with the sequel trilogies as they are, why is it that Rey has the subplot about who her parents are and not Finn, the guy taken from his parents?
Look, man. Look.
We can ask questions all day, but
See this? See this here? This is a mystery box.
I think it'd be.
Ah.
I think it's interesting to like even ask the question, and it's completely away from the First Order, but it's kind of because it's Finn. But like, what does family mean to Finn? What does
Mm.
what is family? What is family in his eyes? What does that word represent? To
I
him?
mean, you know,
Yeah.
obviously we did a Finn episode, but I'd say like his squad, you know, like his
Yeah.
team.
yeah,
Because if you're raised, you know, with no family, no parents, and it's just
Exactly.
a
yeah.
hollow vid of Palpatine telling you how to be a soldier,
they're like Halo Spartans.
Yeah,
they're like Halo Spartans. So they grow
Yeah.
up with their like their
Yeah.
team and their crew, and they're like their captain is like
Yeah.
their father figure.
That's
I
the
guess, or their
thing,
parental
though,
figure.
like, that brings us to another thing. Like with the First Order, it doesn't have to be that the leaders need something to fight for, but why is everyone in the lower ranks fighting for the First Order?
Yeah.
What's motivating them?
Yeah. You know, we want to show that. We want to
Yeah.
show what the boots on the ground soldier, their life and their thoughts are like
Yeah.
through
What
Finn.
do they believe?
We also want to show what, you know, the perspective of their general would be, their general Captain
Yeah.
Phasma, what her driving force is. So
because even though the Empire is full of assholes,
yeah,
all of
Nazis.
them seem Nazis. They
Yeah.
all seem to think that what they're doing is for the betterment of
Exactly.
the
and
galaxy.
no one ever is the villain of their own story. You
Yeah,
are always the
exactly.
hero of your own story. So why have these people been convinced that
Yeah,
they're the hero of their
Like,
story?
I think one of my favorite moments in expanded Star Wars is it's a speech Thrawn gives where he's
Yeah.
questioned about his like why he supports the Empire.
Mm.
He talks all about security and like the fact that yes, you know, there are bad things that happen, but you know, for every like slave or whatever, you have all these people who, when they see a TIE fighter fly above, that's the sound of safety and security. Yeah,
That's a fucking
exactly. It's
good
such
line.
a powerful moment, and I think that really encapsulates why these people are so hardcore for the Empire.
Yeah.
Mm.
And that's a great jumping off point to jump into Article 2, our fixed pitches, our ideas for what we would do in the rewrite. So, who wants to jump in first for Phasma notes?
Well, I guess I have more so general notes and philosophies for how she should be approached. It dawned on me that we don't really have many militaristic villains
Mm.
in Star Wars. Like we have a lot of like, yes, higher ups, Sith and all that.
Okay.
And we have bounty hunters, but we don't really have like a soldier villain.
The one comes to
And-
mind is Grand Moff Tarkin, I guess.
That's true, but he's more of an officer. He's
True,
not
yeah,
a
yeah.
soldier. Like
I-
what I'm thinking of is like someone like Quaritch from Avatar 2. Like, have you guys seen
Oh,
Avatar 2?
Right,
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's a sort of archetype we haven't
I
really
feel like
seen.
we have the closest we get to it actually is like Grievous.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty close. But even then, he dons like he's sort of in this middle ground between like the whole Jedi arc
Yeah.
and all that.
He's also pretty
Yeah.
goofy. I love
Yeah.
Grievous, but fuck, he's weird.
He's,
And-
he's such a like mustache.
He
twirler.
is.
Yeah.
That's how George described him and pitched him. as
Shit,
well.
I've never thought of
Yeah.
that before, but he totally
He
is.
literally
Yeah.
does the
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
yes.
I'm
That's
pursing my fingers together for the podcast listener
Yeah.
because
Holy
oh my
shit.
God. Yeah, no, that is how George pitched General
cool.
Grievous. And I also think that is a missed out thing because have you guys seen the original animated Clone Wars?
yeah,
I've seen
I know
like
a
the
lot of
first 20
people
minutes.
really
Yeah.
love like how scary
Grievous.
is, and I agree with that. I really
Yeah.
like the direction they just went in the prequels because then we
Yeah.
still get a serious side to him.
That's true.
Just want more.
I
Want
know,
more of
you
that,
just
like,
want more of that, like that
psycho
crazy,
killer.
scary.
To be fair, that show is just bloody cool.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like
That triggers balls
Yeah.
to the wall of
think
just like
Mace-
Mace Windu dropping out of a spaceship into a ground full of like 1 million battle droids, no lightsaber, punches. He
Yeah,
does
he-
force kung
it's
fu.
a Fury.
For
is the
anyone
super battle
who
droid.
hasn't had the joy of seeing that clip of Mace Windu in the original animated series, please do
It's
yourself a
beautiful.
favor and look it
God.
up.
It's gorgeous.
hilarious.
so good. I grew up with that show.
I'm assuming most people probably have seen it, but
Yeah.
for anyone who hasn't, you gotta watch it.
You
I
have
didn't
to.
watch it growing up. I watched it like later in my teens.
Yeah.
How did you guys show me?
It's just like it's wild. I wish I'd like watched it growing up because
Yeah.
like seeing that from like a child's perspective would have been like fucking insane.
Mind
So
blowing.
cool. I was like,
Yeah.
this is the best.
Okay.
thing ever.
You did
Anyway,
take us on a
we
tangent.
digress.
Cole.
We
Let's
digress.
get back
Yeah.
to it.
Yes. We were talking about soldier villain.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was thinking something along the lines of Quaritch, where
And that's the guy with the scar over his eye from the Avatar
yeah, exactly.
Blue People movies, right?
Yeah, the Blue People movies.
Got it. Cool.
Yes.
Just
Who
making sure.
also becomes a Blue
Not-
People.
He does become
Yeah,
a Blue
he-
People.
yeah, he's a Blue
Spoilers.
People.
He's a blue people in the second one.
Yeah.
Spoilers for the
spoilers
most
if you-
watched movie of 2023.
Way
or
of the
some
blue
shit.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even though Quaritch isn't super developed, I think that archetype is a really cool thing to sort of explore in the context of Star Wars. Because as I was saying,
Having like a really grizzled, capable
exactly,
military
yeah.
leader.
yeah, he was very like drill sergeant. You know,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
sort of
yeah.
thing, like
That's
you know,
cool.
like in a war movie. you
That's
know,
a
that
really
sort of
cool
type.
direction to take Phasma.
Exactly,
I like that.
and that's something that it seems like they were trying to go, but they didn't really.
She ended up just
take
coming
it.
off as cold and like
exactly
very passive. Like,
And it's
oh,
definitely-
why'd you take off your helmet?
It's definitely like the right direction, but like they might have gone a little too like soft with it. Like,
Exactly,
they could have
yes.
gone harder.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly, yeah, and like another thing on that as well, like Phasma, like we see her a few times in Force Awakens, and then at the end she's kind of treated as a joke, if I remember correctly.
Yes, very
Yeah,
much.
and
She's
it's
played as
like-
comic relief. Yeah.
Exactly, and it's like, oh, okay, nothing's really happening there. It's not Boba Fett, cool then.
No, absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, like if we have that sort of soldier villain, then maybe like one of the really core values to her is that camaraderie. Even though she looks down on people, you know, maybe the reason she treats people so harshly is because she thinks it makes better soldiers and it makes better people. As a
like
result.
She's
Fletcher,
Fletcher.
from Whiplash.
Yeah,
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 it's the same
maybe,
place with
like-
it.
yeah, well, sort of like that, right? That's sort of drill sergeant vibe,
Yeah.
like Fletcher.
Yeah.
That's cool. I like that. Sandra, you got anything?
I had like a similar esque kind of pitch, but I wanted to like lean into the idea of her potentially being a main villain,
Yeah.
a bit more of a core villain
Mhm.
of the first movie specifically.
Okay.
Because I'm very strong on the opinion that I think Phasma should die in the first movie.
Oh wow.
Mm.
Okay.
I think we should have this villain. She's an embodiment of how we see like the true representation of what the First Order is, rather than its like sort of false sheen that someone like Hux might like put over it.
Okay. So if
Um,
you got like the political side of like, oh, we're a militia, we're trying to bring security and safety to
Yeah.
the galaxy.
Yeah.
Outside of maybe the New Republic's, specific jurisdiction.
Mm.
And so she's representing the like, no, we like beating the shit out of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Has that drill sergeant energy, and it also means that we can just have that. I don't want to say simple, but just like bare bones of
You're evil.
you're evil.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. I think there's value in that for
if
sure.
I may add to that as well, I think that would actually be so good for Finn's arc as well,
Yeah.
because in a way, if she's dying in the first movie, she kind of serves as a symbol for Finn's beliefs.
Mm.
And is he still like evil in? Well, not evil, but is he still a First Order sympathizer in the first?
So yeah, with Finn, we talked about this in his episode. We definitely want to start with him being fully locked into the
Yeah.
First Order ideology,
yeah,
and then his arc through the first film is stepping away from that.
yeah,
It doesn't happen in one scene; it happens over the course of the whole movie.
yes. And if his beliefs align heavily with hers and everything she's saying at the start, and then at the end, I don't know, he kills her or something, then that really serves as
Yeah.
a big part of like his character development
Big like
and
yeah,
letting go.
big like symbolic kill.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
much. Yeah.
Interesting.
I was thinking about like First Order armor. It's a conversation that I know Mello would want to have if we were here.
Oh, Mello. Too
Um,
bad he's dead.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace, Mello.
He's not. He's not
not
actually
sorry.
dead.
No,
It's not coming back, guys.
No, actually, Mello's at a place called Lightning Ridge at the moment, shooting a short
Mm.
film with a bunch of friends of ours.
Yeah, no. I'm sure he's having a fun time. That looks awesome.
It does look awesome.
But yeah, it's like I said before, it feels like a very like Disney sort of revamp of like what stormtroopers look like. It makes sense that they'd be similar, but it should be, I think, distinctly different, especially if they're trying to sell it to the New Republic as their form of security in the galaxy. Potentially, or just like different color scheme. Don't make them white.
Yeah.
For starters.
This may be preempting the next segment, but my big idea I've had for the First Order pretty much since I first ever complained about the sequels is that really they should be and I probably have mentioned this on the podcast, but they should be an Imperial twist on the Rebels in the original trilogy. A guerrilla fighting band, but sort of like with the skin and philosophy of the Empire.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's something we've talked a lot about is, having what percentage of balance of power is split between the New Republic and the First Order. We've talked about, is it a 20-80 split with the Republic having a lot of military force? Is it a 50-50 split,
Yeah.
And,
And how does that progress over the...
And how does that change? How we change this kind of percentage of power and military strength?
And also to go on the note of aesthetics of it as well, I think it would be really cool to see guerrilla fighting stormtroopers who are like dressed kind of like rebels but evil.
That's that is a pretty cool visual.
Yeah,
I do like that.
exactly.
Cool.
You see the vision.
Yeah, no, I see it. I just want to say you both suck. I have not had a chance to talk about Phasma. You guys jump right into the First Order. I'm just
no,
like,
go on Phasma. We'll come back.
I know. I'm sorry. I actually have like
Foreshadowing.
a lot of Phasma notes, so I gotta drag it back. Sorry.
No,
That's all
please.
good.
So here's I've got a couple notes for Phasma. So Phasma, I'm picturing her as exactly like Thrawn. So the First Order rests on her strategic genius, and she's always 10 steps ahead. She was born and raised an Imperial loyalist, raised directly by Palpatine's Skype bots to be the perfect strategist and military commander. She is fully indoctrinated and locked in. So I'm in this, just idea offshoot. She's a strategy genius. The reason the First Order exists and it makes it logical in your head is because it's led by her, and she's the military leader. In this
Right.
version, Hux is not a part of the First Order at all. Phasma's greatest fear is that the Jedi will return, who she has been raised to believe are a tyrannical order of space wizards who ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years before the Empire was able to break free from their grasp. That is the story she's been presented with. The exact opposite of the truth. Phasma joins forces with Rey's mom, which is someone we've talked about in the Rey episode, a key villain that I'm interested in bringing into the story, who is a crime boss of the Outer Rim underworld. Finn and Poe are traveling with Rey, and so Phasma wants the first two, and Rey's mom wants Rey. So naturally, this gives us an driving antagonistic force in the film, with Phasma acting to propel Finn's character and Rey's mom propelling Rey. So Phasma will act as a direct foil to Finn in this story and work with Rey's mom. So the crime underworld is coming together with the First Order in this movie, and they're kind of working to track down these three characters who are off gallivanting across the galaxy. So that was my idea for Phasma's character. So yeah, military genius, strategic genius. That's my thought. Any notes on that one?
I think a reason in my head that I kind of don't see Phasma being... I see Phasma more as that general-esque militia,
Yeah, like kind of boots on the ground.
boots on the ground kind of leader.
As
and
opposed to the Thrawn standing on the bridge.
the Thrawn.
Looking majestically into the
Yeah.
distance, yeah.
Is because I imagine that she, even if she is brought up by like Sidious Skype bots, stuff like that, I still imagine a Sidious clone being that background leader, being that
The person with the vision. The person with the
yeah.
grand goal. And he's, operating maybe on the
I really like the
flagship.
idea of being raised to hate Jedi specifically,
Yeah.
and like this is working on this fear of Jedi coming back.
So I wanted to tie it into like the core theme we've been working with so far. This
Mm.
idea that like every character in the first movie is defined by their fears, and it makes sense if you're terrified of the Jedi coming back. That puts you as the Phasma in the place of her own main character. She's afraid of the Jedi, and she's been told that they're evil, so she wants to make sure they stop coming back, and that's her key concern. And that makes her the main character and the hero in her eyes.
Yeah,
and we
pretty
see that
phenomenal.
reflected a tiny bit in Finn as well.
Yeah.
It's Finn overcoming that.
And Finn needs to overcome that because he's becoming friends with Rey, and then he sees Rey become a Jedi or a Force user, and he's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, everything I thought I knew was wrong."
I think that's really strong. I imagine that Phasma is more working under the strategy of a Palpatine clone.
Okay, so you think a Palpatine clone, which is an idea we've talked about a lot, would fit better in that place of the grand vision, kind of looking majestically into hyperspace. In the Thrawn shot, I'm just thinking of that one shot from Rebels.
Yeah.
As he's traveling through hyperspace, he's always doing that, the majestic look. So, and then she's the boots on the ground general. She's the military leader, the boot camp kind of like
Exactly, drill sergeant.
Get up, maggots. Yeah.
I see this, and this is going to go into Palpatine, so I apologize.
No, it's chill. Palpatine's a big part of the First Order for us anyway.
Yeah.
I see this because Palpatine's whole thing of manipulation and twisting truths,
Yes.
using that on Phasma, and then being able to sacrifice Phasma when the opportunity for a new apprentice arises.
Mm.
And that's where we get to introduce and induct Ben into the First Order.
Yes. No, I really like that.
At the turn of the first movie going into the second movie.
Interesting. Because then that puts her in the exact same place that Maul was, that Count Dooku was. In that situation of, Palpatine has all these apprentices and all these irons in the fire, and the second one of them's too weak or they die, he replaces them.
The second he sees a Skywalker, he's like, yeah,
I love them Skywalkers. Give them to me.
Give me those Skywalkers.
Yeah, no, he does that every time. No, that works fantastic. I really like that, actually. Yeah. That's some
cool.
good stuff. Thank you for those notes. That's good. So I've got that. I think was pretty much all of my Phasma stuff. So if we want to jump into the First Order, we can.
So we threw this idea out ages ago. Like, this is before I went to Canada, and I had it brewing in my head when I was in Canada. And there was this episode. I pre-recorded a segment for this episode that might have been recorded whilst I was in Canada. It just didn't end up happening. And I went back and I found this one interesting pitch idea that I had, and it was when we were talking about, because we're talking about Hux. I don't imagine Hux being a part of the First Order, but I see him being also manipulated by Palpatine.
Oh yeah,
to sympathize
absolutely.
and bring the First Order into government as a way of protecting the galaxy from the crime.
So he's
factions.
a senator who's not in the First Order, but he is sympathetic to the
Yeah.
First Order's cause and their like kind of militia style tactics.
And he sees the benefit of seeing them as an answer and a call to stopping the crime factions, the leading sort of power in the galaxy in terms of like, the criminal underworld.
It's almost like how the Resistance is framed in the expanded universe for the official sequels. How they're
similar, yeah. And by doing so, I had this idea, an idea that was thrown around. I'm not sure if it was outside of episodes or was in episodes, of the First Order armoring the crime factions. Maybe this is an idea I just came up with in my head as well. Maybe it never was actually spoken. The First Order giving weapons and supplies to the crime factions as a then strategy, like under like an alias, like let's say Cypher Diaz.
This is something we've thrown out
And they're
before,
like,
yeah.
we give you power under like a completely different alias, not the First Order.
Okay.
And then they come in as the First Order and they justify the fact that
They're using extreme violence
Yeah.
against these well-armed, crime factions.
crime factions, and that's how they get to occupy planets.
Yes.
Because they're like, oh, this is a planet that's full of crime. We have to occupy this planet now.
Yeah. The example there we used was for the Middle East and what the CIA did,
God.
supplying them with weapons in the Middle
Yeah.
East so that they could go in and invade, which
I
is
think
something that
there's-
happened. We're not being liberals. Yeah, I am. Being,
There's
it doesn't matter.
very literal, real world tie-in,
Yes.
as well as just. I think it's a good message, a good way of showing corruption of power, as well. In my pitch, I had this tie into how the First Order ends up on Takodana, but this is when we were still talking about Han possibly running a bar for a criminal-esque underworld.
Okay.
And they use the fact that the criminal-esque underworld is there as a reason to go over to the planet.
Right.
When their real reason to go over to the planet is to get Finn, to get Poe, to get the spy who has the information.
Okay, that's an interesting cover. That's something I feel like could be like a well-placed line drop.
Yeah.
Like, why were you there? This.
This.
It's like, oh shit, that was set up earlier.
Yeah,
Nailed
exactly.
it. Yeah. No, I can see that working as as a motivator.
I can see like Hux using that as an argument, and I think that's a good way of tying in like our senator story to our
No, I like that.
story of the main trio.
A lot of good stuff there. Cole, you want to jump in with anything?
Nothing really to add. I was just thinking about the CIA. Well, I just want to clarify what happened with the CIA in the Middle
let's
East.
hear it. Yeah.
Is that when they were fighting against the governments and stuff like that, they would arm the terrorists who would then be freedom fighters who would fight on their side. And it just so happens that consequences happen. And once the CIA leaves and the military leaves, those now armed rebel forces then get into power.
Yeah.
So it was more so, my actions had consequences and now I got to deal with that.
Which then ended up leading to the 9/11 attacks, right? Something
Yes,
along those
because
lines,
the Taliban.
Yeah,
were,
because they were well-armed freedom fighters who they kind of...
Exactly, and at the end of, I think it's Rambo 2, there's this little tag at the end. Where it's like,
classic historical film.
We'd like to give our thanks to the brave Mujahideen fighters of Iraq or something like that.
Right.
Yeah, so they're thanking the group that later on became Al Qaeda.
That is so fascinating.
Yeah.
I didn't know that about Rambo 2.
Yeah, it's
Fun fact,
it's,
Cole.
it might have been Rambo 3, but it's one of them.
I got a nickname for you, Cole. It's Cole Taliban.
Yeah, Taliban,
For
freedom
Rambo.
fighter.
Freedom fighter's much better.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Jesus
That
Christ.
was a rowdy joke.
Oh my
anyway,
God.
sorry.
Taliban Cole.
Sorry. That's
Special
a really
guest.
That's a really
Ooh.
interesting fun fact. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
You're welcome.
That's awesome.
full of them.
I'm going to jump into another note. The First Order is not a political faction or involved in the Senate whatsoever.
Yeah.
The notion that a loyalist sect of Imperial troops is still operating is a conspiracy theory at best. So that's kind of how it's
I like
treated
that.
maybe in the
Yeah.
Senate, is it like, oh, what about reports from the Outer Rim? And it's like,
Yeah.
that's nonsense, yada, yada. Like, people are like,
Yeah.
treating it maybe as
Yeah.
a conspiracy. That's just one idea. In my current treatment, I have Hux dying in the first movie at the end, and he is totally separate to the First Order. This means that Phasma is the face of the First Order. So we've already covered some of that. Hux dying is like a big character moment, I think. The First Order, as Phasma understands it, has one objective: build an army big enough to dismantle the New Republic. This is another just random idea. This is her singular goal as a military leader, and she's willing to do literally anything to achieve it. This includes kidnapping children on the lawless Outer Rim to bolster the ranks. This is under the vision and guidance of a clone version of Palpatine, who is still running the show.
I think definitely kidnapping the children. Like we've talked about it already.
Yeah.
A bit. I think it's an excellent tie into Finn's character and how we get to look at Finn.
Yeah.
raised.
Kidnapping children, brainwashing them, raising them to be soldiers.
What was this about taking over?
Yeah, I just wrote this down like half asleep last night. Yeah, the one objective is to build an army big enough to dismantle the New Republic. So that's their goal. That's why they're a small force at the moment. They're like building and recruiting.
I like
to
the.
expand.
Yeah, well, it's very similar-esque to Caesar taking over the Roman Republic and turning it into an empire in the
Okay.
sense of
They have all the resources there. They have the infrastructure.
yeah.
Let's
and
just go in and take over
Palpatine
the
would
leader.
be in there from
al-
within.
He's in there already
He's in there from within in the First Order and maybe pulling strings on Hux as
in the
well.
Senate. Yeah.
And he's just waiting and he's taking his time as he does until he can just like cross that Rubicon.
Yeah.
Take over, take that power back. I think it's like another interesting way of looking at Palpatine's manipulation.
And that's their ultimate goal is, to
No.
damn it, Sam.
I know.
That's their ultimate goal, is to take over the Republic, to dismantle it and bring it back to what the Empire was 20 years ago. And Phasma is driven to that because she is afraid of the Jedi. She thinks that they are evil, and that mystery and that deception that she's had, ingrained into her brain has convinced her that that's the case, and that's what's going to happen if she doesn't do something to stop it. That makes her
Yeah.
the hero in her own eyes. I've got a couple more notes, but Cole, do you want to jump in with something?
Well, I was just wondering, do you after like the Empire fell, obviously, and all that, and things came out about Darth Vader, do you think that the general public, like, they wouldn't know about the Sith, so do they just think Darth Vader was a Jedi?
I think maybe they'd think that Darth Vader didn't have powers, and that Palpatine didn't have powers.
Okay,
But
yeah.
Luke Skywalker did.
Yeah.
And he's their boogeyman. He's their kind
Okay,
of
yeah,
like
that makes
big
sense.
mysterious figure who they are like, holy shit. Priority 1, dismantle New Republic. Priority 2, find Luke and kill him. And all of
Yeah.
his Jedi little, missionary dudes.
Oh, okay, yeah. So Vader was seen as like a general, very much similar, and this is why I was very for also making like our key villain more leaning into Phasma, is because I feel like in the original trilogy, even though you only get that 7 minutes of Vader, I feel like Phasma would be better as that Vader-esque character rather than a Boba Fett, where it's just like this very dominating force. You get what it is. It's evil. I think Vader is nothing but evil in the first movie. And you can go back and rewatch the first movies with the understanding that there's something there. But I think that's more to the credit of the writing of the movies that come afterwards and
Yeah.
the prequels. Because in the first movie, he's depicted as...
He gets 7 minutes of screen time
Scary
and he's
guy.
imposing evil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then in Empire Strikes Back
That's
and
when we
Return of the Jedi,
see
they
it.
delve way more into who
We
he
have to
is.
break this character down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in the first movie, he doesn't really have a whole lot to do. So you want to see more of that from Phasma.
I think it's intimidating, and I don't think you have to do exactly what Vader does. We're already talking about her being a bit more of a boots on the ground kind of character. Same
Screen time, just different style.
that same imagery.
So you're seeing Phasma as more of a Vader character. I'm seeing Phasma as more of a Grand Moff Tarkin character, where she is lots of dialogue. She is driving the plot forward. Grand Moff Tarkin is driving the story forward from the antagonistic sense. He is the direct antagonistic force for Leia in the scene where they destroy Alderaan.
Yeah.
He's having the drive. So I see Phasma more as the Grand Moff Tarkin in that sense
Interesting.
of like driving the story forward, making decisions that impact the plot, as
Right.
opposed to Vader, who doesn't really do that much.
Mm,
Not trying to
okay.
disagree with you or tell you you're wrong or anything. That's where I'm coming from, but it's interesting to hear where you're coming from as well.
Yeah, I guess then I'm sort of seeing it as like
A fusion of the two.
a fusion.
Yeah,
of the two.
Interesting.
I can
Okay.
see that,
So
yeah.
less screen time, but driving the story.
Yeah,
Interesting.
because she's still, I guess, being the head of the First Order would still be making calls. Like if
Yeah.
Finn makes a spy call out, it would be her decision to then go occupy that thing.
Yeah.
But then I'd love to like interlace that obviously with, there's a reason the First Order has to be there politically, so it doesn't throw the new Republic off the scent of like, these guys are trying to help us.
So they're trying to do that and trying to convince the Senate that
That they
they're
do-
actually a good force, and then using subterfuge to make
Mm.
themselves look better, compared to that crime world.
Yes.
That's really interesting. I really love exploring that place. I also really love this idea of exploring the idea that the Palpatine clones are everywhere. I want to put them in 3 places in my treatment. I want to put them on Takodana.
Yeah.
That's the person who clues in the First Order because he's there at the outpost.
Oh, I
with Han
thought
and
we were going
Chewie.
to have Finn do that
Well, Finn can do that as well.
as like his,
Yeah.
his
That's
sellout.
Yeah, Finn sells him out. Okay, there's so much to play with there.
Yeah.
But then the other one, he's on the ship with Phasma, and then the other one, he is in the Senate manipulating Hux from the shadows. And I want it to be, honestly, like something like Hux finds a letter on his desk, and then Palpatine's put it there. Maybe he hasn't even said anything to Hux, but he's put the letter there, and it's like, oh, all this evidence about Leia and like her grandfather is Vader, yada yada yada. That's Palpatine's kind of insidious influence.
And would you want to show it in the first movie, or would you want to show it in maybe the second movie? I'm imagining a very cool scene where we go from one scene where this evil from the shadows is talking to maybe Hux or maybe somebody else. Or Ben. And then we interlace that with another scene where another clone walks out to go talk to Hux or Ben.
Holy
and
shit.
And starts like trying to manipulate him as well. And he's doing a double manipulation at
I
the same
love
time.
that. I would actually love to do that in the first movie because
Yeah.
that's a great way to reveal.
I think it's
there's
a very cool
clones.
reveal.
That's an awesome reveal. I would love to do that in the first movie.
How many clones are there?
Oh, good question. I want there to be a lot because you go.
My headspace is like, you can't get rid of them. The number is
The number is a question
doesn't
mark.
matter. The number is a question mark, but it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Because
They're well hidden and you don't know where to find them and they just keep coming.
if you were to kill one, you just show up.
I see, yeah.
You can't kill what is unkillable. He's truly mastered death.
Yeah,
But at the same time,
He's
he
mastered
hasn't
death, but he
mastered
doesn't
death
have the Force, and that's
Yeah.
in the way that he
Yeah.
wants to master.
So that's what he's going for ultimately. Is he wants
Yeah.
to bring himself back and have the Force. If he
Yeah.
succeeds or not is a big question mark we still have, and I don't think we maybe have the time for that today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's another Palpatine episode in itself.
Just a quick note on the clones though. There's another scene that we've had talked about a lot is the idea that Ben becoming Kylo Ren in that journey of him going to the dark side. I want his first moment of surrendering and doing something truly evil to be killing a Palpatine clone. And then another one comes right out immediately. Because you get that, it's like there's almost no consequences for Palpatine, but a huge amount of consequence for Kylo Ren and for Ben and his character journey. I've always been a big fan of that scene.
It's a huge kill, maybe his first kill.
Yeah, that's what I like. Yeah, first kill.
And it means nothing.
It means nothing to Palpatine. It means nothing like overall except to just himself.
I have questions about the Palpatine clones.
Go for it.
I had one. Oh my god, I forgot it. I think, my main question is, so are they all sort of independent acting entities, or are they like
They
not a hive
are
mind, but
not necessarily hive mind. We imagine them to be similarly indoctrinated into the First Order through holovids created by Palpatine.
okay, yeah,
Similar to Operation Cinder in Battlefront 2. Those big like floating droids that have Palpatine's face. It's like, here's your instructions, do this,
Is it
kill.
like the twins Invincible?
Twins and Invincible.
The clones in Invincible, where they're like, you're the clone.
I can't remember this character in Invincible.
You guys don't remember those
I
two
haven't seen
blue
Invincible,
guys?
but
Two blue guys?
The two blue guys, they clone themselves, and when one dies,
Oh, that no,
Yeah.
I remember these guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and they work harmoniously more than like they're kind of like independent from each other.
yeah,
Okay.
Because like I feel like they'd all end up having the same goal, but then
but each
What
one
happens-
thinks they're the real one, right?
then what happens when one wants all the power?
Oh,
Exactly,
so
yeah.
there's the potential for one of them to get the Force.
Yeah,
So they
yeah.
don't have the
So
Force.
No, none of these
None
clones
of
have
them.
the
Oh, yeah,
that makes
Force.
so much sense.
None
Yeah.
of them.
Okay, yeah.
Because that's not something we want to do. We don't want the ability for clones to have the Force ever.
Yeah.
We want there to be some specific thing that's very difficult to achieve. That's a big plot device kind of thing.
I'm
that
still not
allows
even
the
sure
Force.
if the Force is what he wants back.
Okay.
Yeah, well, it's just the power, right?
Or if it's just the power to
And
conquer
the continuation of the Sith. That's another big debate that we've had as well
Yeah.
on the show of whether he wants to have the Force and bring back from death and do the Palpatine and Rise of Skywalker thing.
Yeah.
Or if it's just to continue the Sith and the Empire in general and to have control over the galaxy and have him be the leader of it, which still works.
Yeah, because I know we're getting a little bit off track and into Palpatine, but it does seem like they would all, sort of like, work harmoniously, be independent and all that.
But then there'd be a
either way-
point where
Exactly,
they'd be like,
yeah,
I
'cause
want to be the
There'd
one
be,
in
a,
charge.
there'd be like a
Someone's-
Kang moment.
Yes, exactly. Or like, it's almost like the Council of Ricks, oh God. But yeah, I don't want to be, oh God.
Nah,
it's like-
dude, Council of Rick slaps. Rick and Morty's a good show.
It does. I just find it so funny that all the Rick and Morty writers are now writing Marvel and stuff, and we're seeing Council of Ricks and like everything now.
I didn't know the writers from Rick and Morty were going on to Marvel.
Oh yeah, they did so much, like Multiverse of Madness.
If they
Wow.
work in like
Loki.
Kang Dynasty, that
Ant-Man.
would probably work. That'd be
Yeah.
awesome.
There you go.
I think Jeff Loveness was going to be. This is a massive tangent, but I think Jeff Loveness was going to be writing. I think it was one of the Secret Wars films, He got fired because it turns out he was the big Marvel leaker.
Whoa.
Oh.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, and there's theories that he may have been one of the admins on Marvel Studio Spoilers, the Reddit.
Whoa.
So, yeah,
What's
everyone
the secret
was-
source.
Everyone was wondering, like, where are all these leaks coming from? Because they were high-profile Marvel leaks.
Yeah.
And it just turns out it was Jeff.
Well, more fun facts with Cole.
Yeah,
Bringing the
anyway,
heat today.
I
Sounds
know.
like
That's
Jeff
brilliant.
was writing emails to Reddit before he was actually sending them to Marvel.
Yeah, well, because, like, things would, like, decisions would be made and they'd be immediately out.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, whole scripts would get leaked. And
Dude,
stuff.
that's
Oh
like
my
fucking crazy.
God.
Okay, I just want to talk quickly about a situation I've been in recently.
Yeah.
Because, Sandro, you're working on a film set in Australia. We've got other friends working on film sets. We've got one friend, and I'm not going to be specific about this, who's
Yeah.
working on a pretty big
Huge.
American Hollywood movie right now in Australia. And she's been sending me photos of the scenes from the movie and like a bunch of other stuff. And I've got like, and I just keep making this joke. I'm like, dude, I could sell this. Like, I could sell these photos. It's just a
Leak it.
It's just a really cool position to be in as someone who, we're all just fresh
Yeah.
out of university and stuff. So
Yeah.
it's very cool that we've got friends who are in like such cool places.
You gotta show me these scripts.
Oh yeah, I gotta show you all the
Yeah.
stuff. I gotta show you all this. It's really cool. Sorry, I can't show you, dear listeners, but we
Sorry.
can talk about that maybe.
Maybe if you upgrade your Patreon, right?
yeah, I can show you on Patreon if you
Yeah,
want to pay money.
Patreon, yeah.
Okay, super long tangent. Let's get
Yes.
back to it.
Wait. Palpatine.
I actually have no idea. Palpatine clones.
Which is a
any other
tangent.
Palpatine clones?
Yeah. Oh.
Questions that you have.
Well, I guess yeah, that was the main one because I mean, like another thing is I feel like one criticism I will levy against you guys
Go for it.
is if you have all these Palpatine clones, yes, it does sort of make the concept of Palpatine this immutable, like very powerful thing, but it also kind of weakens Palpatine on an individual level.
Okay.
Mm.
You kind of dilute his character and influence
Exactly,
in the
which-
story.
Is a thing that happens when you inevitably make clones, and when you do multiverse stuff as well, that becomes an issue.
It does
Yeah.
make it hard to
Um,
have stakes if it's
yes.
just infinite clones you can't get rid of.
I think it is really cool though that it's showcasing that Palpatine's real power doesn't come from the Force, but it's his intellect.
Ability to manipulate.
Exactly, which
Yeah.
has always been like.
And we
that's-
saw that showcased in such an incredible way in the prequels.
Yeah.
For the most part, some of the story is a bit like huh? What's his plan exactly?
yeah.
But for the most part, you see
Till
the
he did
character.
that awesome barrel roll and he stabbed 7 Jedi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I like his character in the prequels. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Some of the writing, not the best.
see
but
that-
the,
but
the
the
character
performance
work is in the
as well.
performance. is
But
great.
we see this in the originals as well. It's mostly manipulation.
Exactly.
It doesn't use force
Yeah.
lightning
he uses the
until the very
lightning
end.
at the very end. Yeah.
Yeah.
For the most part, he's just
It's
puppet
mind
mastering.
fuckery.
Yeah.
And also, I sent a group chat you, me, and Mello were in like last week because I had like this mind blowing
Epiphany.
epiphany about the Bothan spies.
Okay. I don't know if I saw this.
No, we all reacted to it
Did we?
because I was like, oh my god, those Bothans, they died for nothing.
Oh yeah.
The
No,
Bothans-
we were talking about the Bothan spies. So
How-
they
yeah.
deliver the info in the start of the Return of the Jedi. Oh, not the start, but like when they're planning, it's like many Bothans died for this
Yeah.
information.
Yeah,
Because
but
they
it's
went on this mission.
information that
He leaked intentionally.
yeah,
The
it's
Palpatine leaked intentionally so that he could lure them into a trap.
yeah.
And so yeah, those Bothans kind of
It was
died.
fake information that the shields on the Death Star didn't work when truly the Death Star was fully operational. and he leaks this to this Bothan spies. All those Bothan spies get
Oh my
killed.
god.
So it's like he's playing 4D chess. He's truly
yeah.
like a master.
He's
of
a
this.
great
yeah.
like mastermind, like puppet master. And the one thing he didn't plan for is the Ewoks, and that's
The
why he
Ewoks,
lost.
True.
those
Yeah.
teddy bears.
Which is why we
The
gotta
one
bring
with
them
the
back.
teddy bears.
That's why we got to bring Ewoks back because it's the only thing that can truly kill
Yeah,
Palpatine.
where are Ewok villains?
Yeah, Cole, I'm gonna just go to the next question. We're getting wildly off track.
Let's
this
go. Let's go.
episode.
Next
Let's-
question.
Alrighty. I think that's actually everything I wanted to cover first order wise. The only other note I've got is what does Mello have to say about all this? Do you have any info from Mello that you can share with us, Sandro?
No.
Well, you've heard it, the folks. That's it for this week. Thank you so much for listening.
No, I think Mello would probably want to get more into like the political side of it.
There's
and
so
how
much
that
he's gonna want to dive
relationship
into. Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
First Order works with Hux. So what does Hux know about the First Order?
Mm.
And what does the First Order gain from Hux? We know what the First Order gains from Hux. It's
Mm.
sort of their into the New Republic.
Yeah.
And getting that funding and getting that more like militarized structure. But how much of the First Order's true intentions does Hux know? How much
Okay.
is he
Well,
in
we've got a
on it?
little bit of time, so let's riff on that for a bit. So, what does the First Order gain by revealing itself to the galaxy? Is Hux sympathetic to them, or are they, like I said earlier, a conspiracy theory? The idea of them existing is
Yeah.
ridiculous as a notion to everyone else. Like, let's start with column A
Alright.
is they know, column B is they don't. Let's start with column A.
Wait, what do you mean by that?
So, column A is the Senate knows about the First Order.
Okay.
What does that add to our story? How does that make it better? I guess?
Well, I mean, one thing I'm thinking of, and I think this does relate to this, I think the reason the First Order would like come out,
Yeah.
and make themselves visible is if public sentiment is starting to like get to a point where people might choose the First Order.
They don't
over-
like the New Republic has been
Exactly.
demilitarized. They're weak
Yeah.
and vulnerable to the crime
exactly,
underworlds
and
on the
oh
Outer
wow,
Rim.
there's this magical organization.
There's this
that's
faction that
here to-
started up that has weapons and
Exactly,
military power. Yeah,
yeah, and I
making them sympathetic to the cause.
Exactly. And what it seems to be in the case of the story in the world is that this time where they've been in the shadows, it's all these small operations to get public sentiment to their side, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's really where the crux of just the galaxy and the political climate will come from.
Yeah.
No, I'm for sure there. I think in ancient history, Caesar, when he was a dictator, when
Yeah.
he was voted in to be a dictator, when the Republic was still happening, he was seen as someone who was saving them at the time.
Because it's a wartime decision. It's like, oh, it's a war. It's a time of war. Have a dictator so that we can make instant political decisions.
Which is kind of already what we got.
I mean, we have that with Palpatine in the prequels.
I think sentiment towards the First Order as a whole, I agree, is their way in.
Yeah.
And Huck's like promoting it. He's still trying to fight for the demilitarization. Like, is that not still a thing?
I'm
Or
not
does
sure.
he want to militarize the New Republic?
I think that's where we landed. That Leia wants to maintain demilitarization, and Hux wants militarization.
Right.
That's kind of the character dynamic we chose at the end of the Leia episode. So if we're going to riff off from that, he wants it to be militarized. He believes in the New Republic, but he believes we also need a military to defend the New
Yeah.
Republic. Still
Yeah.
fits.
So I feel like he probably wouldn't know about how zealotous Phasma is.
Yeah.
And how crazy like anti-Jedi they are.
Yeah.
He probably doesn't know the extent of the child abduction and grooming and
Indoctrination.
That's the word I'm looking for. He probably hears the spin that like they're trying to sell of like, oh, we're indoctrinating these children that have no home.
Yeah. No, we're like fostering these children. And
these
giving
children.
them, a purpose and a safe home and food and like raising them. But yes, they're being soldiers, but it's, it's for a good cause.
So at the same time, we have this public spin and then what they actually are. And we get to see what they actually are through Phasma. And I think that's why I really want to see like Phasma as like our main villain in the first movie. I've been thinking a lot about the Rey's mum thing, and I'm interested to see how we could weave her in, because I'm a bit more open to weaving her in. But I don't see her as the main big bad villain.
I see what you mean. I've been, taking what we've talked about here and trying to figure out a way. It makes the relationship between the First Order and the crime underworld very complicated. Are they putting weapons CIA style into the crime world so that they can create a
Overtake
bigger
them.
flame
Yeah.
to try and put out that flame kind of thing?
Yeah.
Is that their strat? It seems like they honestly have multiple strategies that we've kind of tossed out that they
Yeah.
could be doing. They're stealing kids from the Outer Rim.
Yeah.
They're attacking the Outer Rim. They're trying to defend against the Outer Rim for the New Republic. So yeah.
That's why I'm like
we got a lot
sort
of
of not
questions there.
sure on how they partner up
Exactly. And that's what I'm thinking,
with the underworld.
plot-wise, that ties things together for my treatment plot, but story-wise, themes-wise, it doesn't quite work. So I'm
Right.
trying to iron that out, and I'll be working on that this week, I imagine.
Mm.
But yeah, no, there's a lot of questions there. There's a lot of potential ideas. So that's column A. Column B is no one knows about the First Order. It's kind of like a conspiracy theory. How would that potentially add to the story for us? How would that make things easier, make things more difficult? For me, that saves my ass in the treatment. That makes it a lot easier for them to kind of conduct business on the Outer Rim with no ramifications they can kind of act with.
I feel like it feels like a backstep. It feels closer to where we were in the prequels. It seems like an easy way to just have this big power and not show it. And I know that we're going to show it as like small.
Yes.
But if we're ramping up to them being a big power, I think they have to be prevalent within the larger scale of the galaxy.
Okay.
I also think the First Order is a good way of tying our plots together, specifically our A plot, Rey and the trio, and our plot with Leia and what's happening in the Senate. Which is probably sounds like, oh, it seems more convenient for writing.
Yeah.
But also it seems like if we just have this power that's like kind of just a worrisome word, that's kind of happening in the background, wouldn't it just be similar-esque to all of the crime factions that are currently happening? And I don't see how this helps Hux push for his militarization of the New Republic.
You got to stop knocking your
Sorry.
microphone. Good Lord.
I'm very handsy. I'm very like
Yeah.
You're handsy. Oh my goodness.
hand motion.
Get your hands away from me.
I
Okay. So, I think I'm going to try and this is nebulous, but I think I've got something. Okay, for us, the First Order is a representation of Nazis, right?
Yeah.
And it always has been. The Empire is Nazis, the First Order is Nazis, and, all sorts of different negative military influences that have been brought to Star Wars from, George Lucas's writing, everyone's writing. So for us, what we're drawing inspiration from is a lot of what we see in the United States with what is very clearly to everyone outside of it, Nazi-style propaganda and indoctrination. It's hating trans people and queer people, calling them, groomers and that kind of thing, even though there is zero evidence to back that up. And I will fight anyone on that, I swear to God. And then, so that's what the Nazis did in Nazi Germany, and they started with the queer community, and then they worked towards the Jews. So that's, exactly what's happening in the United States right now, and it's terrifying for anyone who's on TikTok as much as I am. And that's what I'm bringing to this writing when it comes to the First Order. So how can we, and I think it works if the First Order is sort of known about, if people are like, hey, this loyalist imperial faction is operating on the Outer Rim, and some of us like that. And Leia sees that and she's like, no fucking way, Nazis are back. So for me, it's trying to figure out how to tie that into the story and make it work with what we've had so far.
The way I see it is usually like a lot of people when they see like fascism rise, they always point to the organizations themselves. But I think what really happens is the sentiment in the public grows first.
Yeah.
And that's why I think that the First Order should be not known about at first. And then, as I was saying earlier, they unveil themselves when the sentiment turns.
Right.
Because that's sort of what happens in history. People, they start to crave something that's missing. And I mean, like, you'll hear this a lot from fascists.
I might have been interpreting this the wrong way. When you say not known about, do you mean like their true intentions or like the organization as a whole?
I think column B conspiracy theory thing.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, where they're like they're not known as a real organization. Like no one knows about them. Maybe it's like a conspiracy theory.
There's like whispers of it, but people are like, that's not.
But they're not like a public. There's no public face to it.
Continue your thought. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe there's even the theories, that politicians they're being influenced by this group, and it sounds batshit insane. And all that. But
yeah.
I digress. But yeah, I think a big part of it, is I don't think people in the galaxy would start to turn to fascism just because, there's a magical fascist organization. They seem cool. I think what really happens, even in history and in the real world, is when people start to feel fear, then people come up and capitalize on that. Because a lot of the times with these reactionary politicians and all that, a lot of them don't actually believe what they're saying. And I mean, like, even you can look at like someone like Donald Trump, right? And 10 years ago, he was actually quite.
He was a Democrat, dude.
Yeah, well, he was a Democrat.
I watched a clip the other day of him straight up like, oh, this someone who's running for Miss America, Miss Universe.
Yeah.
Oh, this transgender woman. No, she's a woman.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that was before he was ever running for president.
Yeah. And that's the thing, and I don't want to get on like a soapbox about Trump or anything like that.
I do. Nice.
Well,
you go.
It's like whatever's been said, people have said. I can't really add anything to it.
Exactly.
It's like, I think what's evil about politicians like that is they don't actually necessarily hate queer people, but they're willing to throw down any value and stuff for what people are actually going to support them for.
For attention, because it's so valuable. Attention is so valuable.
Exactly,
today.
And say what you will about Trump, but in the 2016 election, what he was very good at against other Republican politicians is that he was a populist who knew what people wanted.
Dude, no one had rallies like Trump.
Exactly.
No one. He made rallies a popular thing to do.
Exactly. And one of the interesting things as well is a lot of the things he was saying, like there were kind of like right-wing twists on a lot of the things Bernie Sanders was saying because it was rooted in the same issues that were coming up.
They know Americans and, most people in the modern world are struggling with, day-to-day living costs, healthcare and stuff. So he was just spinning the ideas in like a right-wing focus.
And that happens with any extreme person throughout history. So I think in the context of Star Wars in this rewrite, I think, what needs to happen is that these sentiments need to grow in the public.
The public is afraid of the crime underworld.
The New Republic isn't answering the
New Republic
issues.
has no military to answer the crime
they can't deal with any of the issues that people actually feel. And even though there are right solutions that would probably deal with this, the New Republic, they think it's too extreme, maybe. Maybe it's like too left,
Yeah.
Then you have an organization pop up who are like, oh, we have all the solutions. It's like making a deal with the devil, really.
It's like, here's the solution that you need, maybe not you want.
Yeah.
Is that not then the First Order being prevalent and having that fake
I think what
public
Cole's
image?
saying, and I think I'm seeing it now, is maybe they do their grand opening or their big
like
announcement at the end of the third act of the first movie.
Something like that, yeah.
And then in the second movie, you see the public sentiments like, fuck yeah, First Order. That's the good
exactly.
shit. You see the sentiment grow in the first movie first with someone like Senator Hux, who's like, oh, maybe the Imperials had some of it right. And he says that in a Senate meeting.
Yeah.
And then, later on, we see the First Order get revealed. And then you see the public sentiment in the second movie, and they're like, "Oh wow, these guys are like, they have it locked down. This is great. We're no longer afraid of the crime underworld.
Yeah.
They have provided us with security."
Yeah, exactly.
And then you see it get twist.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a really interesting way to go with it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think as well, like if the First Order were to get into power, the average person, they're going to see an improvement in their lives.
Okay.
But what the real horror is, it's the fact that everyone else suffers so tremendously.
Yeah.
And most people, are willing to give up their rights for security.
I feel like you're still getting the same themes and messages whether you have them
A big
prevalent.
reveal or not?
Yeah.
Okay. I think what Cole is saying is that like the sentiment grows first and then the organization comes out.
It's like a more of a
Either
process
way,
of
we're still
discovery.
seeing the sentiment be there by Hux trying to persuade to bring them in. So I feel like the sentiment's there either way because they're still trying to present a public image of this is what we are, this is how we can help the galaxy. The only really difference is they come in later in the movie and they present and they show that. Whereas if we have them already there and have them as something that's known but not working for the New Republic, and then something that Hux is pushing for to be sort of semi a part of the New Republic, it then becomes more of that manipulative, oh, we've been playing that game, we've been creating like subterfuge and like giving the crime syndicates more weapons so that we can use that as a smokescreen to occupy their planets.
Yeah, I honestly personally could go either way right now just because, we've been talking about it, so many thoughts being tossed out. Something we'll lock down later. Definitely some interesting ideas, definitely an interesting direction with that. I like the idea of like the reveal at the end. That's something I
think that could be a fun moment. Big moment.
My question is, if they reveal themselves, how do they reveal themselves? Do they just show up and say, hey, we're this army that's been fighting crime syndicates?
Well,
and they haven't known about it?
Well, what
for
could
ages?
perhaps happen is, we're sort of running under the assumption there are politicians who are kind of secretly working with it, right? Maybe, what happens is something happens in the context of the plot, and then all the politicians who are First Order people, they come out and are like, oh, we're starting this little group called the First Order, and we have all these resources, and there's an issue in the galaxy we're going to take care of. So maybe it's like all the people who are secretly working with the First Order sort of do this like big unveiling to the public where they like just state their intention or something along those lines. Might not work.
No, that's
an idea.
That's an idea.
Right,
Yeah,
okay.
it's an interesting scene. But we're gonna have to wrap it up there. So I'm just gonna quickly cover something. We've done politics again. We've got on our soapbox and we've talked, liberal talking points and stuff. We don't want to be talking heads, but we are very open to feedback and criticism and comments from anyone who's listening and has something that they want to say. And we're happy to engage in that conversation politely, and with good intentions.
Yeah, exactly. I think it is important to listen to the other side.
Yeah, no, I definitely
Absolutely.
agree with that. Yeah, something we haven't really dived into it a whole lot yet. We haven't really had the chance to engage with any audience about it, but we're open to it for sure. But anyways, that's the end of our soapbox. Thank you very much for listening. Hopefully it's not too insufferable.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that has been our episode on
Phasma and the First Order.
Yeah, our episode on Phasma and the First Order. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. If you've watched along, go ahead and follow us on Patreon. Check out our Linktree. We've got everything up and running now. But until next time, may the Force be with you.